Welcome to the WAIR Chats podcast, a series where we dive into the conversations surrounding all facets of e-commerce and the people working to make it a more sustainable and productive industry for all. My name is Greg Moore, founding CEO of WAIR, and your host for today's podcast. All right, be honest. How many times do you check package delivery status on your e-commerce orders? If you're anywhere near average, it's 8 to 11 times. That is crazy. Today, we talk with Murray Watts, Strategic Account Manager at Route, about how he went from a Major League Baseball player to working for a company focused on building sustainability and transparency into the post-purchase experience. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of WAIR Chats. I'm here today with Murray Watts, and Murray is the Strategic Account Manager at Route. He also played baseball with the Kansas City Royals, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. So anyway, welcome, Murray. How are you today?
Good, Greg. I appreciate you having me on. Excited for our chat. I think we've got a lot in common that I'm sure we'll dig into.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's not too often that I get to talk with people about baseball, right? Especially people that were in the organization. So, big piece of my background. So we can start there for a little bit. But before we get started, I'd love to ask you. There are a couple mottos that my parents kind of gave me as a kid that have stuck with me, right? And no matter what I do, they're not leaving. And I'm always curious if there was something from your past that was a motto that you sort of have, positioned your life by or that you live by, and how that impacts you today, like something that's just carried through for a long time with you.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think really two come to mind. The first is something my dad always said to me. He said, if you're going to give them a hand, make them a good one. It's a good Southern phrase of, hey, if you're going to take a job, you're going to go do it, and you're going to go do it with excellence. And so he hammered that home, whether it was school or sports or early in my career. He would say that all the time. And I think the second one is one that I've implemented with our little family here. I've got three little kiddos. And what we continually say is the Watts do hard things. And really trying to emphasize to our kids, hey, this might be difficult. It might be terrible. Greg, we were talking pre-show about shoveling the driveway with snow. And it's like, hey, the Watts do hard things. Like we do go shovel the driveway when it snows. And so those are probably the two ones that come to mind that have impacted me.
Oh, I love that. All right. Is there ever for the first one? Because I've never heard that. It's great. And I can totally see the Southern roots in that phrase. But is there ever a time where you didn't do that? And like inside your head, you're just fighting with yourself and you got to go back and you're like, dude, look, my bad. I messed up. Like, let me do this differently.
Yeah. So I think there was a time where I grew up in Arkansas, Northeast Arkansas. The fun fact about that is we're the world's largest rice exporter in Northeast Arkansas. And so I grew up working on a rice farm and didn't really know what I was getting myself into. And I came home from the first day of work and I was like, I'm done. Like, I will never, ever do this again. This is the worst thing in the world.
Yeah,
And,
totally.
uh, and I was sitting around the dinner table with my dad and he's like, listen, you committed to do this. You said you were going to do it. Now you're going to go back and you're going to do it. And you're going to do it well. Like, you're not going to complain. You're not going to have a bad attitude. You're going to be a good hand for these people. And so I think about that. And then this is kind of a baseball career kind of thing where he always instilled like the hard work and doing it with excellence. And so that carried through my baseball career, even in the hard times when I wanted to give up, I wanted to quit, I just wanted to be done. There was always that little voice or his actual literal voice on the
Yeah.
phone saying, if you're going to make him a hand, make him a good one.
Totally. No, I love that. I love that. So it's funny, and I think I probably say this on every podcast, but my big one for my parents was return with honor, right? So they literally had a placard by the front door that said return with honor. So every time I left the house, I had to look at this thing. And it was funny because, as a kid, I mean, you have all sorts of different things thrown at you, all sorts of different decisions thrown at you with like, my buddies are going out and they're doing silly stuff. Am I going to do it with them? Right. And part of it as a kid, you're like, yeah, but it looks like a lot of fun. But that thing would always go off in my head. And I'm like, dude, is this going to bring back a lack of honor to my family? And it was really interesting because even today with our kid, we've got three little boys also. And even today, that's one of the big things that we live by in our family. But I love the fact that there are these mottos that just they stick with us forever and ever, and they're generational in a sense. They just stand the test of time. So I always like to know that and ask that. But that's super cool. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I love that. I probably need to put a placard on our wall too. Watts do
Yeah,
hard things.
that's
Just
right.
ingrain it even more.
That's
Uh,
right. When they put it on their bed when they wake up in the morning, they just see it. Put it on the bathroom window when they go in there and they're brushing their teeth.
it could be like the Notre Dame play like a champion today. Like you got to
Yeah,
touch it every
everywhere.
time you come by.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. No, that's great. Well, cool. Let's transition into your life. So one of the things that, as we were talking before, caught me is that you play ball, right? And I played ball for a long time, not nearly as high levels as you, but talk with me about your career in that sense and how you transition. I think you got up to a pretty high level in the minor leagues, right? So tell me about just your baseball career in general, and we can use that to kind of set the stage for everything else.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, growing up, I played every sport, and it was mainly kind of focused as I moved into junior high and high school into baseball, basketball, and football. And for me, I just fell in love with baseball. I loved the sport. I loved the pace of play, all of those kind of things, and really even the grind of it, which is funny to think about. The high school baseball grind compared to where I ended up. But yeah, played in college. Went to the University of Arkansas out of high school. Redshirted my freshman year. It's a really difficult year in a lot of ways, personally and on the field, being away from home for the first time, not being the big fish in a little pond
Yeah,
anymore,
yeah,
dealing with the disappointment and all of those kind of things, and actually ended up transferring to Arkansas State, back into my hometown where I was from. Played baseball there, and they got drafted by the Kansas City Royals, and then played about 4 years in the minor leagues with them. And then talk about the grind at that point. I thought I loved baseball, and I was like, okay, now let's do it 10 months out of the year,
yeah, yeah.
every single day, and see how much you really love it.
Right.
And so it was a grind. It was incredibly fun. It was incredibly terrible. It was all the range of emotions, I think, in those 4 years.
Man, did you one of the statements that always comes to my mind is like there's no better way to kill a passion than to make it your job.
Oh,
And so it's one of those things
telling you.
like, yeah, man, you start putting that much time into it and you're like, okay, yep, I'll field another ground ball. Yep, I'll
Yep.
field another 1,000 ground balls today. Today. Okay, got it. Yeah, yeah, I understand.
Yep.
Um,
Oh,
yeah,
I'll take
totally.
50 more swings. Oh, let's make it 100. Oh, need a little bit more. Those kind of things.
Yeah, yeah. Now you got to work on your oppo because your pitcher was throwing you inside the whole game, and then you didn't get that practice in. So go to the cages. Yeah, man. It just
Exactly.
keeps going. It's crazy. But well, that's cool. Did you ever? So I actually worked in my career in baseball with the front office of the Royals, and they were awesome. Did you ever run across a guy named Michael Grootman or any of the folks up in like the player development offices?
So that name doesn't ring a bell. I interacted mainly with JJ Piccolo, Scott Sharp, Dayton Moore, kind of on that development side, on the day to day piece.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Yeah. And then again, with my background, all about like baseball data and analytics, did you like how much data kind of came into how you guys played the game or managed the game in the minor league?
That's funny, Greg. I wish we would have met 10 years ago. You probably could have helped me in my career more with some of those things. I think it's crazy to look back because I got drafted in 2010, so 13 years ago. I got drafted, and as much as you thought we were modern then, I look at the data and analytics that's available now compared to when I was there, and it's like, man, this is night and day different. We were struggling to get film, like daily film to look at. And there were no analytic tools or anything like that. And then all of a sudden, I want to say it was probably 2014, 2015, you really see this spike in the analytics. And how do we leverage all the data we can collect and then maximize it for each individual player? So I think looking back, I was just before really the peak of all of that. I think it would have helped me a ton. Of course, I say that, and I tend to overanalyze things, so maybe it actually would have hurt me more. I don't know, but I like to think it would have been helpful.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. There's definitely different types of players and employees in that sense. Like some folks just got to go play, and other folks are just going to sit there and just hone in on the data and just really make it valuable. But yeah, it's funny because I remember when I invented all the pitch tracking technology and hit ball tracking technology for Major League Baseball, and I remember when we started to transition that business over from broadcast elements, like we'd show where the pitch across the plate, over to licensing data to teams. We would go into the front offices of teams, and say, "Hey, we have like this crazy objective data source. You should buy it. Here's what you should do with it." And people were like, "I don't even know what you're talking about." And then you push that forward like 2 years after we started making that transition, and all of a sudden they'd have these war rooms. So before you actually got to the front offices, like where the general managers are wearing whatever else, you would go through these big round like fish bowls of like quants, right? You get these kids that just would work for free out of Harvard and MIT and all these amazing institutions and sit there and crunch on this data that we're delivering them. And then you started to see these crazy transitions in baseball, like these shifts that just went like unbelievable players taking and or swinging at strikes or balls, just totally off of normal baseball trajectory. Really, really weird things in baseball, but it definitely was interesting.
I know a couple good friends that continued on in their careers after me that I think if you ask them, they would say, I kept a job for as long as I did because of the analytics.
Yeah,
Pitch data, like you're talking about, pitchers who, maybe their numbers, their stats didn't look amazing and had a rough year. But you look at the analytics, you're like, man, if we play this out over 1,000 innings or 100 innings or whatever that number is, it's actually going to benefit you because your fastball spins at this and your sliders at this. And so I think it revolutionized the game in so many ways.
yeah, yeah. No, it's very true. The one thing, like, all right, so as we transition over to what we're doing today with e-commerce, the one thing that I'm starting to realize is how much the e-commerce industry and the retail tech industry is very similar to the baseball industry and how it underwent its data transitions, right? And so if you think about, a couple of years ago in e-commerce, like we were very spreadsheet heavy, right? I mean, all the data was coming in on a spreadsheet. You'd have, somebody that knew a little bit about some spreadsheets and they'd probably put some formulas, some pivot tables and things like that in there. And now all of a sudden, that entire industry is getting influxed with so much data and they're trying to make sense of it and understand it. And I want to transition that into your career with Route right now and understand like, you know, with Route, you guys are obviously collecting a lot of data on logistics. And so, one, I'd love to hear about, how you came to Route as a job and opportunity, what sort of enticed you about it, and then also, how data is kind of flowing through your job on a daily basis and helping you to make changes about how you approach your days.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think, even to tie it more to kind of what we talked about analysis by paralysis, I think there is the opportunity in e-commerce, especially today, with how much information is accessible to brands and founders now. It's like, okay, what's actually important? And so how do you narrow down that funnel of data that's actually actionable for your business? And I think what attracted me to Route was, at the time, this is over 3 years ago, a really novel product at the time of package insurance, package protection, right? We see across all industries 1 to 3% of packages are lost, stolen, or damaged. And love it or hate it, Amazon changed consumer buying behavior drastically. So they want packages fast, and they want issues taken care of without talking to a human. They don't want to call anybody. They don't want to email anybody. They want to click a couple buttons and just get another package. And so what attracted me to Route was, man, we can duplicate that on a brand's e-commerce site. And then as we start having these different integrations with carriers and Shopify and BigCommerce and all these platforms, we start to gather all this stuff. We say, well, we can actually proactively notify people in transit of where things are going. And both of those are, foundational pieces to an e-commerce business. But I think when I look at the future of where Route and the product could go, that's what's even more exciting to me is, okay, we have all this data. We can make it actionable for a business to make great decisions and help engage their customers to increase the LTV all through post purchase, not just tracking a package or not just if something goes bad, but really transforming that entire experience for a customer.
That's awesome, and totally. And I mean, I think at the end of the day, one of the things that attracted me mostly to learning more about Route is your guys' passion for sustainability, right? Which is not necessarily something you see out of a lot of logistics companies, right? It reminds me of the oil and gas industry. I don't know, probably 5 to 10 years ago, when renewables started coming up, and they did everything to try to put a throttle in that, saying like, no, like we don't want to do this. But now you look at it and you look at the amount of money that like Chevron, BP, and some of these folks, Shell, are spending on renewables, and they understand like we are an energy company, not a gas company. And
That's
in
right.
Route's perspective, it's like the efficiencies that you guys bring to the shipping infrastructure and how you think about sustainability is a really interesting thing. So maybe you can kind of share a little bit more about that for us.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where I talk to brands every single day, and they're like, we're not a carbon neutral company. We aren't fully sustainable. We aren't these things. It's like, hey, that's great. I totally get it. Full transparency, Route isn't either, but we are making steps towards that. And there has to be a place to start. And so the brands that I talk to, it's like I, I want to do something. I don't know how to start. I don't know where to go and do any of these things. And so for us, we found a way to leverage our data with an integration on a e-commerce platform, an integration with a carrier, tie in origin, destination, mode of transport, all the different data points to figure out like, oh man, this is how much carbon's being emitted for this shipment. And it's different for Murray than it is for Greg on this package. And it's different for this brand versus this brand. And so, how do we actually make an impact in a way that's accurate and not, kind of which way is the wind blowing? Let's figure it
Yeah,
out. But
not the
but have a
greenwashing that's going over the rest of the world right now.
that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. So have a way to really dial that piece in. And then the second piece of that is how do we tie into a brand's strategy of sustainability, but even more with the customers, they want to know they're buying from a brand that fits their ethos. They're also partnering with a brand to be more sustainable. It's a really easy way to do it, and we make it super easy for somebody to see a dashboard, to track it in the app, their own personal impact and a brand's impact at the same time.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think, you know, having an understanding of the impact is the first thing that you have to do in order to be able to impact the adverse impact that you're creating. Um, have you guys taken it a step further where you're now trying to also offset that impact in any way through partnerships that you've created, or is it really just an education to your customer of what this impact is?
Yeah, great question. So it's actually the second step of that is how do we make the impact there? And so with all the calculations, we see all of that. We actually facilitate the purchase of the carbon credits, and we have different projects going globally that will leave a lasting impact. I think you mentioned greenwashing. Right? Everybody's they want to do something, but they don't want to do anything that is greenwashing. That's kind of fake and it's not legitimate, and so we did a ton of legwork to find the right partners to make those projects last. So our current one right now is a project in Brazil. It's an afforestation project where we are not only planting but we're maintaining eucalyptus trees, which we could dive into that of why those are the best and all of those kind of things. But ultimately, it is something that is lasting and making a material impact on the atmosphere.
That's awesome. If I know anything about eucalyptus, it grows like wildfire. So like at
Yeah,
the end of the day, you plant one and boom, forest is here. So
that's
from
right.
a
That's right.
from a carbon dioxide offset to oxygen, like that's actually got to be pretty impactful in a sense, which is I'm assuming part of the reason for that.
That's right. Absolutely. And I think too to mention, what I've seen in the e-commerce industry is so many brands, upstream. How are our materials more sustainable? How do we make all of our products more green? and that, a lot of brands and companies have figured that out. They're making huge strides, but it's that last piece of the e-commerce journey that there's not really a solve for at scale. So how do we impact that transit piece? And that's really where we focused.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So one, thanks for sharing, and that's really cool. I was actually talking with Danny, our marketing director, about some different areas where we want to start leaning into giving back. I think
Hmm.
that's just one of the things that, you know, as a startup, sometimes you're a bit early in that, and sometimes you can't really make a big difference. But I think it needs to be a part of the root of the organization. Then it can grow as you can grow. So, you know,
Hmm.
seeing you guys do that, seeing like Cotopaxi do that. There's some other brands that just have done such a great job at really leaning into giving back that it's just one of those things that we just have to do it.
Yeah.
We just want to follow suit in that. So that's cool.
And I think,
Um,
kind of like you mentioned, if you have it at the core of your business
yeah,
as a foundational piece, it grows with you. It's not a
right.
band aid, a couple years down the road. And I think, Davis and Cotopaxi over there, they've done a phenomenal job. We love to tout them, great partner, but Salt Lake brand. I'm here in Salt Lake, so we love those guys for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very cool. So now, like transitioning to, let's say, like other vendors that are also selling services and goods into the e-commerce merchant world. What are some tips and tricks that you can think of that can kind of help boost from maybe not zero, but they're kind of getting their feet wet, they're finding product market fit, and then they're starting to scale that out. What are some frameworks or strategies that you've leaned into at Route to help you guys continue to grow the way that you're growing?
Yeah, I think the biggest piece is e-commerce is always growing, it's always changing, but there is a piece where you have to figure out what's your actual market. And I think Route, we've done a great job of finding a niche in the market, being first to market on product insurance, right? And seeing that, man, this really makes a ton of sense for SMB mid market brands. Let's build here. And so our strategy was let's build this groundswell at smaller businesses, maybe a little bit lower volume, and then work our way up market from there. And so, as far as strategy for us, that's what we've been relying on the last few years, and then allowing our technology to build and build and build, where that data then becomes really interesting for an enterprise type brand, where they can leverage a ton of the legwork we've done, and our technology on the product side has also come to a place where it really makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, that makes good sense. I think, you know, we're even doing a lot of that with WAIR, is really understanding where we can be most impactful. And it's really
Hmm.
interesting because, you know, at first we started off saying, all right, let's build for the SMB market. And then as we started to understand the real problem that we're solving, which is immediately right, is helping consumers find the best fitting clothing. But you start leaning into some of the data that's coming back, and you're like, even if I recommend you the best possible size for this product, it doesn't necessarily mean that this product is right for your body.
Mm.
However, this other product that could be offered from the same site, the same brand, may be better fit for you. And so when you do that, then you start realizing, like, all right, in order to get to that, you have to have so much data, and the brand has to
Hmm.
have these product portfolios. And so now all of a sudden, that SMB market that we were really good with, we're now, you know, building solutions they can't necessarily take advantage of.
Yeah.
And I think that I'm assuming that Route probably goes through cycles like that too, where in order to get into a lot of the product that you offer, you probably have to have a fair amount of data coming through it. And so, how do you guys navigate that with, you know, the different tiers of customers that you serve?
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point, Greg, where you're not going to learn any of these things until customers start to tell you,
Mm,
like, oh, this actually is where your product really fits. It's like, oh, man, we've been selling it over here. This is what we thought. That's really great insight. I think there's market there, and so I love that piece, and kind of where we've gone. There's the intricacies of our tracking solution and our engage or product recommendation solution on the back end is really where it's not to say an SMB company can't use it or it's not great for them, but we've, like you've mentioned, seen brands with a large portfolio of products where they have, higher AOVs, multiple items in a bag. really see success when they can leverage our machine learning and the AI on the back end of the product recommendations in transit. Because you have to think, as a consumer, I'm most engaged with a brand when I first order that product and I'm tracking it. Data says that 8 to 11 times in transit, somebody's checking the tracking. It's because they're like, "Oh man, I'm so stoked to
Wow,
get
it's
this
that
new
high?
vest," or "Oh, it's what." For
That's
me, I was like, "That seems
amazing.
really low." I check it 50 times, I think. Uh, so I probably skew the data a little
Yeah, right?
high, uh, but yeah, I mean,
Like, "Oh,
it's
this one's a
eight.
Murray order. We got that one."
That's right. Eight
Nice.
to 11 times somebody's literally just looking, pre-route, I'm looking at the USPS website.
Yeah.
Well, so how do you, as a brand, leverage that engagement for your own brand? And some of
Mm,
that is, oh, well, I want a branded tracking page. I want some of this. And it's morphed into, I want to recommend accessory products. I bought a vest. I probably need a shirt with that. Or I bought ski boots. I need to buy skis.
yeah.
And so you have that. But then also, we've seen a lot of brands really leverage that interaction of, hey, we know you're getting these golf clubs, for example. When you get them, this is how you use them. This is how you maintain them. This is how you take care of them. We're going to speak to you and get you even more stoked
Mm,
as that product's getting to you, which does a couple things. One, it reduces returns. And number two, it makes them a fan for life because they think you know them, which you do know them in a lot of ways,
right.
and you speak to them in the way they want to be spoken to. So yeah, I think leveraging all that information as a
Mm,
brand is critical, with especially all the changes and how they're advertising these days, and
totally.
the effectiveness or lack thereof of some of the marketing tactics they've used previously.
I love that. So, I mean, one of the other businesses we run is a company called Fit 3D. So it's a B2B play, right? So it's not in the Shopify or e-commerce space, but we deploy 3D body scanning units to commercial wellness entities, and
Hmm.
there's so much education that needs to happen, and the timing of when that education goes out is really critical for it to be adopted
Mm.
and internalized, right? And so in this case, and we've spent unknown number of hours like trying to optimize this pipeline to make sure the information gets to the customer at the right time. And for you guys to have the triggers that can alert the brand back to that, that's amazing. I didn't even know that was part of the service. That's really cool.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, and it's crucial because
yeah,
uh, like you mentioned, it is that timing piece of it. Because as a consumer, again, this is kind of the Amazon effect. Like you're looking at your Amazon app and you know it's in your city, you know it's out for delivery. They've got it down where, hey, I know it's like 8 blocks away.
yeah.
Being able to see
Order's
all of that and
approaching.
have all that, yeah,
Totally. Yeah,
you
it's really
you
cool.
need to be able to deliver the right messaging at the right time. Because the last thing you want is more CS tickets because you've done a poor job of either communicating or sending the wrong thing.
Yeah, totally. No, I love that. Have out of random curiosity, have you there's a lot of overlap between, route and like loop and returnly and happy returns and stuff like that. Is that a space that route looks as potentially competitive in the future, like something you could get into? Or is that a space where it's like they're great at what they do, we'll integrate with that and help that service as well?
Yeah, I think right now it's, hey, they're really great at what they do. Let's find a way to integrate. Let's work alongside a Loop or Returnly or Return Mates or some of these other ones that are out there, that people are already using. Let's make it really easy for the customer to file a claim if something happens or return the product.
Mm,
Because the nice thing with Route is as we continue to grow, this number will increase, but we've got about 4 million monthly active users in our app. And they're coming there to track packages, they're shopping new products, they're discovering new brands. And that's the perfect place to engage somebody in a return. So, how do we make sure that integrates across all the platforms?
yeah. That's really cool. I love that. So maybe a more kind of a future facing question here. So as you think about ecom and how it's changing, over the next several years, what are some of the big like where do you see us in, I won't go too far out. I won't go like 5 to 10 years. Like where do you see us in like 2 years? Like where does ecom take the shopper in 2 years? And what's that experience look like?
Yeah,
Super
I think
nebulous
we're
question. I apologize.
yeah, no. You gotta give me these beforehand. I gotta think
That's
about
right,
it. Uh,
huh?
I think we're starting to see a lot of it now of how do we integrate all the experiences that a customer wants and how can they engage with your brand? They're going to look you up online. They're going to look at competing products. They're going to look at who wears your products. So, how are you leveraging social media? How are you leveraging potentially influencers or people that wouldn't call themselves influencers but tastemakers? How do you leverage that? How are you leveraging retail stores like physical brick and mortar? As unsexy as that was probably 3 years ago,
Mhm.
I think I'm seeing a resurgence of that where brands are leveraging that for the customer, but even their own logistics. So, how do we ship products faster in a place? How do we get returns, make that easier if somebody's shipping it to us or coming in store? Because I see brands leveraging that interaction in
Yeah,
person
yeah.
to keep them engaged with the brand. Because the worst nightmare of a brand is I get a return and they never come back. So, how do you keep them engaged? So, for me, the next couple of years for brands, it's going to be absolutely critical to have a mixture of all those experiences
Mm.
because customers have come to expect an immersive experience with the people they buy from.
I love that. The other piece of that that I find is really interesting is like your desired experience with a brand is probably different than my desired, which is different than, Bob's or Danny's or someone else's. And even such that, you said that when you're waiting for a product to ship to you, you're checking it 50 times, or I'm like, oh, 11's high. um, but it's really intriguing when you think through like the personalization of that whole journey, right? And just how complicated actual and real personalization is. I
Mhm.
think there's things like optimizing and dynamic yield and some other tools that are out there where you can kind of like A/B test your site, maybe some different copy, maybe some different images. But in very few circumstances is the experience personalized to Murray, right?
Mhm.
Do I know that if I give you this experience, it's going to lead to the best possible outcome? And I think that it's interesting because we're starting to get to enough data to be able to think about those types of solutions, which could make for a very fun commerce industry in the future, which I think would be really cool to see.
Yeah, I love that piece, Greg, because I think about it as I shop online. I bounce from sites all the time if I feel like I don't have products that I'll ever buy here, or why are they showing me? It looks like a women's brand. I'm not going to buy from here,
Right.
and so I love the thought of how do you make it custom to the person that's coming in and leverage that for higher engagement, higher purchasing, repeat purchases, all of that. I'm curious, Greg, how are you guys? Are you going to impact that in any way, or because obviously you're collecting a ton about people? Is there a way that you guys are thinking about leveraging that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, it's funny. We've had a lot of conversations about this over the past month or so. Um, a few less than we thought. Normally in Q4, like in like November to December, the business side of the house is like pretty quiet because
Yeah.
everybody's out there executing, right? And so like we don't normally get a lot of new customers. This year it's been crazy. I have to tell you, like there's almost no slowdown in new customers for us, which is unique. It's a new thing for us. So we've had a little less strategic time than we thought. But to that end, we really started thinking. We were doing this. I read this book called "Build a Story Brand" by a guy named Donald Miller, which is a
Hmm.
fantastic book, and it really helped to structure a lot of how we think about who we are as a brand. And we started building out our brand story. And in that, we started to realize that when you get to a product page, that there is nothing on that page that is personalized to me, an individual, right? It's going to be the same data, the same images, the same model, the same like stuff all the way down the page. And what we realize is that WAIR is the literal only piece of that page that will personalize one flavor of that experience to you.
Mm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
when you fill out your information, we tell you exactly what your size is. And then on every other product, you can see exactly what size fits you the best. That is personalization on that page.
Yep.
And so it really got us thinking as to, all right, so this helps you understand this product, but how does this help you understand our product catalog? And so, like, for example, I was shopping a brand the other day. I used our solution. It recommended the best fitting size for the product. I ended up buying it. It fit me great, but it was really long, right? And
Mm.
I happen to have a relatively short torso, but there's no other size in that product that would have fit me better. But had
Yep.
I known, right, if I went to that site and had I been able to be like, all right, other people that are like, between 5'10" and 6 foot and like 200 pounds, like these are the things that they've reviewed really highly that are going to fit them well. And I'm going to see this dynamic catalog that's specific to me and my body so that I know that everything in here is going to fit me the way that I
Mm.
want it to fit me. I just got to stop for style, price, and material now. Um, that's an entirely different experience, right? That's something that has never necessarily existed before. And so, when we think about the future of personalization, I think that it's more than just what's on the PDP. It's how is the brand that I'm shopping personalized to me, even
Mm.
from their catalog perspective, right?
Yep.
So anyway, so we're starting to think a lot about that because I think that it's kind of the future of that we can impact. And then two, it's a shopping experience that I would love to have.
Yep.
Yeah, it's personalization. It's just becoming huge. It's just such a big thing for us right now.
I'm just making this connection in my head. So go with me. It might not come out great, but I've spent the majority of my career in sales, and all you ever hear, like the pushback typically is, Greg, if I was prospecting you to try to sell you a software, a lot of the thing is like, hey, you sent me a bland email that you sent to 100 other people today. It
Right.
wasn't personalized. I'm offended. Like, come on, you didn't do any research on my business, and I'm offended. Well, it seems like, and we'll probably see this, those ecom managers, those directors that are building these sites will probably come to a realization that I have in a sales career that you have to personalize it. It has to be relevant for the person, or otherwise it's like, this isn't interesting.
Right.
No thanks. And so that's funny to kind of draw a connection there of the personalization because it's just not there at all on site.
Yeah, I agree. And again, it goes top to bottom, right? There's tools that are out there that are trying to get to that. But I think that
Mm-hmm.
now that it goes back to the very beginning of our conversation around data, right? The data is just now starting to be captured. And then as that data starts to get analyzed, then you can start to make impactful decisions based on that. And I think we're at the point now where a lot of the brands you work with are really starting to build out their data muscles. They're starting to build
Mm-hmm.
out data warehouses. They're starting to like integrate BI tools, and then eventually they'll integrate ML and AI tools, where the data is going to start to tell them to do things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a really interesting place for e-commerce in that sense, all the way from what to show this person when they arrive to the site to how what products should I produce, and
Yep.
even going through that realm as a brand, like how do I continue to evolve myself. So anyway, I think I have a huge passion for just data in general and the ability to understand it. I think we're getting there, which is fun.
So I have another question, Greg. I know this podcast wasn't for you to pitch WAIR to everybody or your product ideas, but I do have another question. I'm curious because I'm thinking about all that you're collecting, and most of it's on PDPs, right? Where I'm already looking at a product. I want to know what it fits. Have you tested or thought about if I go further up the funnel on a landing page before you can even see a product, or are there tipping points where it makes sense versus it doesn't to get that further up the funnel to make decisions of what people see from there?
Yeah. Yeah, we've started doing that with some of our, I'll say more visionary customers. So like Vineyard Vines, we do that with them, where above on the categorical pages, we have
Mm-hmm.
a content spot that allows you to basically put in your sizing information or put in your data, your body data. And then from there on out, like we'll be able to sort of catalog to you based on that. SheFit does something very similar where they'll
Mm-hmm.
start to capture that piece of the experience earlier on,
Mm-hmm.
such that every page you go to, you'll know your size. And I think the next evolution of that is to continue to move upstream and then to be able to dynamically adjust and show the catalog again that is going to show products that are going to fit you, right? That are
Mm-hmm.
available in inventory. So it's a natural progression, and I think most PDP features and tools have the desire to move upstream,
Yep.
and we're no different. And I think that the biggest thing is that we know that we can have a huge impact, and the data is already suggesting that we're having a bigger and bigger impact the earlier that shoppers get into the WAIR flow. So
Mm-hmm.
we're leaning into that really, really heavily. But man, this year, when I looked at our roadmap for this year, I've been working with our product teams, and I look at our roadmap for this year, and I'm like, dang, this is gonna be a fun year, man. It's there's so much cool stuff coming. I can't wait to talk
uh,
about it. But they're like, whoa, 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 buddy, let's just let us get there, and then you
uh,
talk about it more. But
they get a little
anyway, a
squirmy.
lot of
It's like I can't commit to this. I
I
can't commit to this.
know.
You're like, no, no. I think can I just talk about it now?
Yeah, I'm like, I talk for a living, so you got to give me some credit. You got to give me a little leverage here.
That's right.
But no, Murray, this has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate it, and I love your take on where the industry is going. I love what you guys are doing around, and I just it just is so powerful. I just like you're like, yeah, that's a great idea. It's really cool. So I'm going to close up by asking you a question. Obviously we are helping to drive the e-commerce industry, and we're builders in that industry, but we've also got families, right? So and personal lives and things like that. So how do you balance, right, all of the requirements that are put on you from work and then from family and from maybe friends and from the personal activities that you like to do? Where do you find that
Yeah.
balance, and what are the frameworks you think of there?
Yeah. It's funny that I think the first thing that came to mind is, even today, 8:30 rolls around. We've all had breakfast. I'm working from home today, and it's like, all right, kids, I'm going into work. And I just walk downstairs to the basement to my office and close the door, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's silly, but it is a thing where, obviously I want to be present with my family as much as possible, but there are demands of work that I need to focus on and need to do. And so finding ways to pour into my family when it's family time, but then also having pretty clear boundaries of, hey, dad's going to work right now. He's going to be unavailable for most of the day because he's going to execute here. And I think being diligent in the work during the hours that I'm working frees me up to, I don't know that I ever turn it off, so to speak.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're the same, but,
Yeah.
put it to the side of like, okay, I've done what I needed to do today, and I've checked those boxes, and now I can be present with my family, or I can be
Right.
present with friends, or get away and close the laptop for the rest of the day. But it's hard. It's difficult. I think for a long time, COVID first hit. It's like, oh man, I can work from home. I
Yeah.
see my family all the time. This is great. I can still get everything done. And then all of a sudden, it's like, okay, I actually need to put some routines and some things in place to make sure I'm doing both really, really well. But I don't know if there's a perfect solution. It's tough. It's difficult. There's demands that are high on both sides.
Yeah, no, it's totally true. I think it's funny. I was having this conversation on Twitter the other day, and we were talking about work life balance, and I was like, "Well, isn't it really like work life harmony?" Because on the one
Hmm.
hand, like one's going to go up, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the other one can go down. Sometimes it just
That's
means
right.
that you have to sacrifice yourself to keep both of these really high, and then you can like take for yourself at other times when you need it. But yeah, it's those frameworks are really tricky, and they're day by day, right? So some days it's
Hmm.
just more challenging than the others. Um, but it's always fun to be able to lean into both. And I think from my personal story, pre-COVID. I mean, my wife and I work like crazy. And so, I mean, we spent maybe like 15 like good solid minutes per day with the kids, right? Other than like,
Hmm.
hey, let's rush out and get to school and let's rush home and let's get homework done. And then, all right, you got to go to practice and then let's get dinner on the table.
Yeah.
All right, now you got to go to bed. And then COVID hit and it was like, man, we got to spend hours with the kids. And it really changed our family dynamic around a lot. And so
Hmm.
even today, my kids will get home from school in just a minute, and I just don't schedule anything for like 30 minutes when I know they're coming in the door because they're going to rush me. Right. And then
Yep.
it's like, all
Yep.
right, cool. We had our time, like get out of here. And then
Yep.
they go do their stuff. They go play and whatever else, and I can get back to it. But like you can schedule those times in between the day, which it's just critical. I really, really love the ability to kind of mix it up like that, which is fun. But
Yep. I love that.
cool. Well, Murray, man, again, this has been great. Really, really fun to talk with you. Super excited to continue to follow your journey and the journey of Route. And I just really appreciate you being on the show. Thank you for your insights today.
Yeah. Same to you, Greg. It's been a pleasure. Love it. Maybe if I figure out some other interesting things, we'll have to do it again.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. I'm always down for the recap. All
Awesome.
right, my friend. Well, you have a great day. Have a great weekend and happy holidays.
All right. You too. See ya.